Hello, welcome to Tom Talk Shop, Episode 2. We're going to talk about if you can only afford one good plane today. And first thing I want to say is I want to thank everybody who watched the last episode. I wasn't expecting quite so many people to watch. I thought it would just be the 25 or so people that always watch our channel. So thank everybody. We appreciate it. I'd like everybody to like, comment, subscribe, and please ask questions. It really helps us a lot. So let's get started. One of the most asked questions I get is, I've got money for one plane, one good plane. Which one should I get? Well, I'm going to start probably going to recommend this plane that I have in front of me, which I've had for, I think, 7 or 8 years now. I replaced one that got damaged. I'll probably go ahead and recommend the Veritas low-angle jack plane, the plane I have right here in front of me. I've had this plane for about 7 years now, and I bought this when I had a wooden plane that was damaged beyond repair, and I've been extremely happy with it. In fact, I'm so happy with it, I bought several more since, but this was my first one like that. It pretty much does everything a hobbyist woodworker, even a hard-working woodworker would need for a lot of things. It's very versatile to use. It's got easy to change blades. The blades are very easy to sharpen, much quicker. And I can, from popping a blade out to getting it on the stones and being back together in 5 minutes. And I often do this 5-6 times a day. Also, I've got different blades that I can use for different uses. If I've got really difficult grain, I have a high angle blades. You can get tooth blades for using it as a scrub plane. I don't have any of those to demonstrate today, but I do use it occasionally for removing large amounts of material. I have a dedicated scrub now, but you could use it either way. At this point, I also want to remind everybody that we don't take sponsorships and we aren't here to hawk anything. I just want to help you make informed decisions, and I really only review things that I own and use myself. So let's get on to the next segment. I'm sure everybody is going to want to know why I'm going to pick this one over the Lie-Nielsen, I believe I'm saying their name right, the Lie-Nielsen plane, or some of the cheaper planes like Wood River, which is by Woodcraft, I think, which I've used and I wasn't real impressed with. I'll be honest with you, now of course we have a lot of Veritas planes. I think we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, about 9 I think total in here in the shop. This was the first one we bought. We may have actually had one more before it, but we bought them in kind of rapid succession, the first couple. And it has really, once I got it, I was using it and it was like, man, I can work an extra hour at planing without tiring out, and quite a few other things. I noticed right away how much easier it was to use. And instead of spending 35 minutes getting the blade off, taking the chip iron off to sharpen and everything, so I was only sharpening once a day, I found that, man, I could just pop the blade out, get it out, hone it, put it back in, make a couple of little adjustments, just like that, and literally I was ready to go again. Where with a standard bevel down plane, it would take me 20 minutes to get it back where it was, and usually within 2 minutes, once, in the not counting the time it takes to sharpen, I'd be back to work. When you're keeping your planes this sharp, it just saves your body a tremendous amount of work. Also, for the money, I believe Wood River is only like $30 or $40 cheaper, and it's really a considerably lower quality plane. Fit and finish isn't as good. There aren't as many spare parts, and I haven't found that Woodcraft really takes as good a care of you. On the Lie-Nielsen side, they're beautiful planes. They're very collectible. You don't see any in here. They never have seemed to ever come through for a product for us when we needed one as a professional shop. They really are only geared towards the collector, quite frankly. I don't think they're really a good plane for a professional shop. And quite frankly, for the extra money that you pay for one, I hate to bang them around as much as this one has. It's got a good patina and it's on its second handle now. Okay, I've got out here in front of me, and Sukey will put a bigger picture of these blades up in the corner. So I've got my main blade here that I'm using. This is the one I use most of the time. It's a 25, 27 degree more or less angle. It's pretty pretty flat angle. And I never flatten it or anything. I just always sharpen it side to side. So it's got quite a bit of concavity to it. That's the correct word. So it's pretty rounded, and it kind of can be used as any smoothing. It's convex. Yes. Anyway, this one is about between 45 and 50 degrees. It's the same thing. I freehand sharpen it, and it just works well. This one is used for difficult woods is what it's for. They've got a lot of figure, and also I use it if I'm smoothing, but this blade will give you a smoother figure if there's not a lot of tear in the wood. If there's a lot of tear out, then you want to use this one. This one is almost a scraper, and then usually after I've used this one, I go back over it with a scraper or a scraper plane to get everything nice and flat the way I want it. Okay, now this one here I sharpen it almost perfectly square, and as you can see, it's still nice and shiny. It doesn't get sharpened near as many times as the other one does. It's used strictly for jointing. I use it for just squaring up the edges of boards when they need to be just perfect. Or if I'm flattening a tabletop and I want it perfect. So, particularly a bench top, I never get a tabletop that flat. It's sharpened. I have a jig I built for sharpening it, and I just put it on that and I drag it across the sanding paper and then after that on a stone until I get it good and sharp. But I always make sure that it is square this way. And also I sharpen the angle pretty precisely on that one. These other two, I only sharpen them freehand, and I never worry about it. It's always good enough, and do keep them all razor sharp, shave sharp. All right, I've got the blades back in the plane, or the blade, singular. And first thing I need to do is I've got a rough sawn piece of poplar here. I think I've got it going the right direction. I didn't even look. No, I don't. And
that's your all-purpose.
Yeah, this is my all-purpose blade. And I'm just going to clean this off and flatten it so that I can thickness it. I'm going to thickness the other side, but I'm going to get this side flat first because it's got a big cup in it. So I've got the plane set up right now. I haven't set my depth yet. It's just barely cutting. And I've got my throat open pretty wide so I can take quite a bit of material off. And then I'll just take a couple of passes and I'm just scraping it. So I'll keep checking here until I've got it about the way I want it. That looks like a good start. So I'll just go across the top of it first, just taking that cup out of it. Going front to back, back to front, just getting it down. As you see here, I'm taking a really aggressive cut with it. Not quite as much as a scrub plane would, but then again, it's not going to tear out so bad, and it's not going to leave a mess for me to clean up later. And when I'm doing this, this is usually my finished side. I like to do first and get flat, and then thickness the back side. Unless, of course, you have to have two sides good. As you can see, it just ate right through that. I've just about got it, I think. One more pass here. It doesn't mess around when it's sharp. And compared to my older planes, this thing I can work hours longer. As long as you keep a nice sharp blade in it. Just a little bit more efficient than your bigger wooden planes are for this sort of work especially. Yeah, I'm pretty flat now. Now I just need to start flattening it long ways. I've got a high spot right there. I'll back it off a little bit. So I'm just taking off a little bit. There it goes. Just getting a bit off the top there to start with. And yeah, it's starting to flatten out. But yeah, you can see this thing does everything you need to do, and it's long enough, unlike the number 4 or something, which is quite a bit shorter, that It gets the board pretty flat. You don't have to have a joiner. It just is faster when you're doing really long stuff. But you know, it's a big expense, and if you don't have a lot of room, this can save a lot of room as well. Okay, now I've got this pretty flat, not perfect, but it's pretty good. As good as I probably will do it to this point. Now I want to smooth it a little bit, so I back my blade back out. So I'm just getting a little bit of a grab. Now I'm going to take, and I'm going to, when it behaves itself, I'm going to close my throat up a little bit. If you got that there, bring it up really tight so I can get a good fine shaving. This one really isn't that important with this piece of wood, but if you had a piece of wood that was a little bit crankier, this would be really important. Okay, so I've got this, and I've got just a little bit of bite there, not a whole lot. I'm going to give it a little bit more now that I've got the throat closed, because it'll actually affect the way it cuts too. There we go, just getting a tiny little splinter of a shaving. Actually, maybe a little too much, but let's get it a little flatter first. There we go. Nice narrow shaving there, smooth. I want to get this as smooth as I can, so I'm not removing too much material later when I come back to it to use it for whatever I'm going to use it for. So I'm just about got it. Scratch right there. I always typically do my front face first. Get it the flattest, and if the other side doesn't need to be as good, I don't pay as much attention to it. One way of saving a little time and money. Unless the cat, you know, wants to see a perfectly plain piece of wood. Okay, about got that. I'm going to back that off just a tiny bit. There we go. Getting just some really nice and smooth shavings. And you can get them a lot thinner than this, but for our purposes here, this is plenty good. My power planer out in the shop with fresh blades doesn't do half as good of a job as this. Okay, took a break and I cut this board closer to width, and I'm going to square this edge up. I deliberately did a really bad job, as you see how quick and aggressive this thing can be on edge cuts. So I'm going to open my throat back up on it, set it pretty aggressive, and take a look at it first. Ooh, boy, I did an even more awful job than usual. Okay, so I'm going to have to take a bunch off this end and get that off there, a little bit off the ends. So let's take big chunks off. All right, that gets us closer, and take a bunch off this end. Now, there we go. Just getting all the wave out of it quick. Okay. But you can see this thing makes quick work of it. And it's not a big fuss to adjust. With another plane, I'd be pushing twice as hard too. This one just gets right through it like it's butter. Okay, almost got all the basic wave out of it. Okay, now I'm gonna take another look at it. Pretty straight, not very square. Oh my goodness. Okay, still too much. Hang on. There we go. A little off the side there to start with. There we go. And I've just got my daily driver blade in here, not my joining blade. Let's take just a little bit more there. Should be getting close. That's dead on right there. That one's dead on. They're all pretty good. I've got a little bit of a high spot right there. All right, now I've got one square edge, and before I forget which one it is, I'm going to mark it. Okay. Okay, I've got my edge all squared, so I'm going to just take my marking gauge and I'm going to set my final thickness of this board, which is going to be 7/8, which is standard for our shop. We do a lot of things 3/4, but generally we plane to 7/8 to start with most of the time on 1-inch boards, because we saw them to 1 1/4 most often anymore, or 1 1/8 anyway. And as cupped as this board, you can see why. Wow, it's quite a bit to remove there. All right. So I've got my depth all marked, and I'm just going to tap it into place here. Okay. And then I'm going to make sure I've got my throat open, which I do. And let's see, I'm just not getting enough meat there. And while I'm at it, I'm going to put the stay put on it there. Okay, so what I want to do now, I'm going to use this how I'd use a scrub plane, but I'm just going to start by taking off one side of it here, getting close to my mark without... I think the board's pretty flat, but my bench may not be right there. And do the same thing over here, just taking a little bit off that side so I don't cut past my mark. Now that I can kind of have almost see what I'm doing there, and I'm going to do the same thing on the end just so my bad old eyes can see what I'm doing. That's about where I want to stop at. Then I'll just start taking big hunks off. And that's pretty good, but I can take a little bit more even. Just, I'm taking over a 1/16 probably every pass. It's quite a bit. Whew. I've actually got that down to about where I want to go. I'll just start moving backwards. Just checking my lines as I go. As you can see, it's not quite as fast as a scrub plane, but gets the job done, and then there's actually very little cleanup afterwards, which is nice. So there's always trade-offs with things. Whew. Okay, I've got this almost to thickness, and it's pretty wavy still, so I'm just going to peel a little bit more off. I've now backed the blade way off, so it's just barely bumping it. I might give it a little bit more. Now, if you were just using this plane alone, and you were doing a lot of scrubbing, Veritas makes a really coarse tooth blade, I'm sorry, not a plane. And it might be a little easier for doing some of this. I was scrubbing off. It was making me sweat a little bit. Might not work so hard, but if you're just doing it a little bit, this works just fine. I'm not going to get this side real flat. I'm just going to get it flat enough because it's going to be the underside of something and it's not stain grain. And I really like to leave a few tool marks so people know that I went to the trouble of doing this all by hand and I didn't just whip it through a machine. So, and the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to start squaring up the ends and show you how I use the plane for that. Okay, I've got the back side. Actually, this was the side I was doing. I left it a little rough, but it's all right. I've got my square side over here. And I talk about doing this in other videos, but in this case, what I'm really talking about, I just want to show how well this plane works on end grain. So I'm a bit out of square here. I've got to take a little bit of meat off this. And it's a little out of square both ways. So I start, well, there we go. I don't use a shooting board. So what I do is I just kind of always playing towards the center with this plane. You can use it with a shooting board. As you can see, it's 90 degrees on the side, so if you care to do that. I find they hurt my shoulders, so I just do it freehand, which is the way I learned how to do this. All right, let's just take a little off. And it goes from being a fuzzy, rough cut to just being smooth like it was cut with a machine. Now let's check it against the square side. We're still a little bit high there. Taking just some nice, smooth shavings. Well, we're almost there. And of course, if I didn't have the camera in my way, I could just step aside to the other board and plane the other way, but a lot of times I'm lazy and I just pull it like this. This plane works perfectly good this way. Just a teeny, teeny bit more. Okay. There, I've got a square edge right there. Now, I'm going to show how I do one other thing with this plane before I kind of hang it up for this video. So I'm going to mark, I'll do it on this side so the camera can see it. I'm going to mark a bevel like I'm doing 45s, miter, sorry. And I probably should do that with a razor. So what I do is I take and I mark my miter on here, and I find my point. Hopefully my head's not in the camera too bad. I find my bottom of my line, square to that. Mark my outtake there. Brighten that up a little bit so my old eyes can see it. And I'll just freshen that up. So I've got a reference on this side, close enough. All right, so what I'm going to do here to make a miter, like if I'm making a drawer and I'm not going to dovetail it or I'm not going to rabbet it together, you can use this thing, and it really does a really good job at taking a lot of meat off quickly, as you can see here. Just working back and forth. The regular plane just really struggles with that cut. It will do it, but it just doesn't do it as quickly and as cleanly. So I just work back and forth. I'm cutting away some waste here so it doesn't blow out. I don't have to keep changing direction. There we go. Okay, I'm getting down near my front line there. Got the ways to go in the back. I'll leave that for last. Now, I'll just keep hogging away here. Getting really close. I've got a little bit more to do. You can build a shooting board to do this, but again, I just have decided I just prefer to do it freehand. It was the way I learned to do it. With a little practice, it's actually probably a little quicker. And it's actually a little easier on your body too, because the ergonomics are better. Okay, I'm down to my face line there. Now I just have to bring everything into line. And I'm going to take a little bit more off the top. And then back my blade off so I can get a nice clean cut as I work into that line. Almost there. Now, it's too deep now. Since I don't have a mate to check with, I would be checking that against a mate, but that's pretty close right there. Yeah, it's within a hair's breadth of being right. I'm all out of breath and I'm all done with this as we kind of rush to get all this done for the camera. I've shown a few things that you can do with this plane. It's extremely versatile. If you can afford one good plane, this would be what I'd recommend. I think at the beginning of the video I discussed why I like this one over some of the other competitors, cheaper and more expensive. I'm going to show, there's a smaller version they make. I'm not sure what it's called. We'll put it in the links though. Sukey uses this plane. It does the exact same functions. It does everything. If you are sub 105 pounds and smaller, this is a much better fit for you. It's a little harder to use for joining because it's short, but when I was a kid, I used this plane for joining and I never got a longer plane until I was probably bigger than that. So learning and using just a shorter plane for joining can be done. It's just more eye and less letting the plane do the work for you. So everybody, if you've stuck with us to the end, I sure appreciate it. Like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't. Ask questions, and we'll try to do this again. Thank you.